So welcome to One on One. Each weekday at 2 we talk to some extraordinary people. They come to tell their story and choose their favourite music. Now today it's the turn of Christopher Holland. Now he's the younger brother of singer and musician Jools. But Christopher himself has had a successful music career, and the pair recently played together at St George's Hall in Bradford. I saw them do that a few years ago. Absolutely brilliant they were, as well. Some great guests like Ruby Turner as well. Now Christopher has recently released an album, Corner Green, and he joins me now. Hi Christopher.
Hi Adam, how are you doing?
I'm fine. Do you know, I managed to listen, because it came out in August, didn't it? But I managed to listen to Corner Green this morning, sort of while I was at work, and I couldn't believe the amount of tracks you've got on it.
Yeah, it must have been a long morning, I've got to say. It was a long process. It was about sort of 3 years in the making, and there were quite a few demos that I didn't quite sort of finish. So I put those on as sort of bonus tracks really at the end for particularly sort of limited edition as a CDs, which I think you must have.
Well, I was impressed. I tell you what though, a real influence of George Harrison. And I don't know why, but it just came across to me.
Well, that's really sweet you should say that. I mean, we've had the pleasure of working with him, in the past, and hopefully some of his, beautiful spiritualness has sort of rubbed off on me. You never know, but he was a really special person. When we played with him and sort of hanged out with him a bit, hung out with him, and it was it was a really big influence, obviously, and there's just something about him which seems to be really special and unique. So that's amazing compliment, thanks.
Yeah, I think, and I know that when we play some of your music, there is a George Harrison track. Hopefully we get round to that too, and we'll talk about some of the other influences in your life as well. But and when I listen to the lyrics as well, there seems to be a real outpouring in this particular album, Christopher, as well.
That was partly, it was started about 3 years ago when my father passed away. It might have had a little bit of connection with that, but there seemed to be a lot of songs just kind of coming out, and I just sat at the piano and just loads of ideas and sort of things came out. So I suppose it's kind of like a way of releasing all this sort of stuff through the music. So it seemed to be kind of 3 or 4 years ago, and then it's taken probably that long just to finish off the whole album, because it's been sort of quite a long process in between doing the tours and gigs and various other things. So, but yeah, I'm really proud of it generally, overall, I think. So.
Well, Corner Green's the title track. Where does the name come from then?
Yeah, so I had a few ideas, but that kept it sort of stuck somehow, because I've got a little studio at home where I've been writing and recording. It's only really basic, but it's a kind of little it's called Corner Green where it is, and it's just a nice little sort of scenic spot in like a little shed in the garden almost. But it's quite, it's just got quite a nice sort of feel about it, and it kind of summed up the feeling of the album. And there is a track on there called Corner Green, which is one of the demo ones, but that's it was in the summer, and it was a beautiful day, and the sun was shining, the sort of birds were singing, and the trees were filled with blossom. So it was kind of just an uplifting kind of title as well, really.
Yeah, and you like the simple pleasures. When I was reading about, I understand, when you're talking about nature at its best there, and being able to inspire you, and obviously there's reasons for that as well. Christopher, in brackets next to your name, Christopher Holland here on One on One, Jools' brother. Now,
it should be the other way around, shouldn't it? Jools, yeah.
Does it annoy you that you are quite often referred to or even defined by being Jools' brother?
Yeah, it's hard to know, because it's kind of been that way for quite a while, I suppose, and it's obviously growing up together, although there is a big age difference, but growing up together, obviously I was inspired by him and his playing and Squeeze and all that stuff, so kind of ended up doing the same thing, almost playing piano and stuff, but that's kind of led on to other keyboards, not just piano, but like vintage keyboards and sort of Stevie Wonder type sort of clavinets and different sounds like that. So it's quite different what we actually do. But obviously he's on the television a lot, and he's obviously a lot well known. So he sort of get known as the brother. But that's all right. It doesn't bother me. It kind of probably helps or opens as many doors as it closes. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, watching you on stage there, and it was at Bradford a few years ago, so it might be when you started doing your Corner Green album, sort of putting together. It was either 2 or 3 years ago, and it's a fantastic performance, isn't it, that you do with the rhythm and blues band, because there's lots of great guests, and Ruby Turner came on that night in particular. You're very much sort of not the showman, if you like. You know, so get on with it.
Yeah, I'm not really. I'm sort of more like the music to speak for itself, and I'm not sort of. But I mean, Jools is so great at that. You know, he's just a sort of brilliant showman, and it's amazing because the Rhythm and Blues Orchestra has been going almost for 20 years or something, and there's no other big bands, you know, rhythm and blues, big sort of orchestras that can kind of keep going for that long on the road, that just keep doing it, and it seems to get better every year. So it's great, you know, and he really loves it, and everyone's like a big happy family.
It is a happy night, though. That's the thing, Christopher, isn't it? It's a happy night when you go there.
Yeah, and it appeals to all ages, which is great. You know, there's some sort of young kids and sort of young people who've never been before, and then there's lots of, you know, just generations, and everyone seems to just have a good time and get uplifted. So it's fantastic, you know. So yeah, that's and also, like you said, we get to work with so many other artists which you wouldn't get a chance to in another band, you know. But it's been it's a great sort of job, really.
Well, one of those is Paul Weller, who I also saw on the same stage probably a few weeks after you were there, actually, a few years ago. And he, you know what I like about Paul, and sort of yourselves and Jools as well, especially when he's on television, you just get on with the music. There's not too much in between. You just sort of, you know, get on there and play it, and you do what you're meant to be there for. Yeah,
with him. I mean, I did tour with him for about a year, a few years ago, or it was about 10 years ago, but. And it was amazing seeing how he works, you know, because he likes to have we used to just get in his studio and we'd have a jam for about in his rehearsal place for about an hour, just kind of jamming and coming up with sort of ideas, which was quite good, a way of warming up. But then when he goes on stage, he's just got this energy and this power, you know, which is so great to watch and be a part of when you're on stage. So it's great experience to be part of that for a year, and it was a big influence, you know, listening to the way he was sort of working songs out, and it's I'm a big fan of his. He seems to get better with age as well, I think, and his voice, you know, seems to mature. So I think he was, last time we saw him, he's been doing his new album with the orchestra, and it was about a month ago, and he seemed really well. He's sort of not drinking. He said he's stopped drinking because he's just had 2 twins, and he's just got this new lease of life. So he's kind of he's just on this kind of healthy well, I suppose. Anyway, I gave him a copy of Corner Green, and he said he'd listened to it. So hopefully that's what he's doing at the moment.
Well, I know Danny Baker, extraordinary broadcaster. He was very. He said it was a late entry. He said for. Was it album of the year, didn't he? He was a big advocate for it. Started playing all the tracks, and then he got his show got cancelled, which was good. So great. No, he's a lovely bloke, and he's a big fan, which is great because I think lots of people respect what he says, and he's got a great knowledge of music generally, and he doesn't like stuff. He only sort of plays what he likes, you know, which is great. And there's not many people left like that, really. So we're speaking to Christopher Holland. Because musician, songwriter, player, performer, got this album Corner Green that's been out for a few months now. Your influences are really, particularly because you're in the business, it's really interesting to see who influences you, Christopher. Tell me about Stevie Wonder and the track that we're going to hear. How's that come about?
Well, yeah, Stevie Wonder, one of the first albums I ever bought, I think, when I was about 12 or something, maybe younger than that, but it was Songs in the Key of Life, which was one of his best sort of albums, really, a double album that he made. And I remember sort of getting his record it was like a second-hand shop or something when I was away on holiday or something with my parents, and just playing it non-stop when you're sort of going through that moody teenager sort of thing, just 13 or 12 or something, and but it was just I don't know, I just couldn't stop playing it. It was just such a beautiful album that and it kind of something clicked because I could hear all these kind of sounds that he used with the Moogs and the key and the sort of clavinets and the different keyboards, and that kind of got me into that whole vintage synth sort of thing as well, which I've collected over the years. But yeah, that was kind of one of the first influences, really, because he's a bit of a one-off, really, Stevie, you know. And you met him at Buckingham Palace, I believe. You met your hero. Well, that was pretty incredible because I had seen him at the O2 about a year before that, and that was amazing. But then there wasn't any opportunity to meet him then. Yeah. And then when this came up at the Jubilee concert, I didn't actually realise he was doing it till we got there, really, and then we were kind of sound checking, and someone mentioned, they said, "Oh, Steve has just left." He's actually, Paul McCartney was on when we got there, and he was sound checking. And I think one of his band said, we just missed Stevie, which I thought was a shame. But then we went on to just before we went on to do the show, it was just with Ruby Turner singing "You Are So Beautiful," a Billy Preston song. Yeah. And then suddenly Stevie appeared out of just like magic, like Mr. Ben in one of those kind of moments. And it was just like when you do a double take and you can't quite believe your eyes, And it was it's such a he's amazing because he's quite big and he's bigger than I thought. Imagine somehow he's a big guy, and he's just like a magnet, and he's got these kind of people around him, But everyone just seems to sort of swarm to him and just wants to touch him or something. But anyway, he did his show, and then I kind of it was quite relaxed behind this secure, the backstage bit because it was so chaotic. But I kind of managed to walk up with him and his band onto the sort of stage, so I sort of stood at the side just to watch his set, which was pretty amazing because I was on the best seat in the house probably. And then when he came off, I just kind of had hug and say thanks, and he was such a lovely man, and he was really had a nice little chat for 5 or 10 minutes, and that's all I needed to make my life complete.
You met your hero. They say you shouldn't do it.
Well, I wasn't disappointed, because he could have gone, he could have been, oh no, he could have been really rude or something or horrible, and then but he wasn't at all, and it was just, we had a hug, so that was it really.
Wow. Hey, we're speaking to Christopher Holland, of course, musician. Here on BBC Radio Leeds, it's one-on-one, and for you, though, Christopher, your first choice. You are the sunshine of my life, from his hero, Stevie Wonder. That's the first choice of my one-on-one guest, Christopher Holland, the musician, and of course, a man who has created an excellent album called Corner Green. 26 tracks, no less, on it as well. I had the pleasure of hearing it today. You will, of course, know him as well as the brother of Jools Holland, but he is a fine musician in his own right, and I'm pleased to say he joins us now on BBC Radio Leeds. If we can just go back to those significant early moments, if you like, Christopher, in your life. You mentioned, of course, growing up and the influence of your older brother Jools and the band Squeeze, labelled with love, I've got to say, one of my favourites. But what else was going on in your life? What other influences? What else happened early on to sort of shape you?
Well, I suppose going back to sort of 7 or 8, that's when Squeeze kind of started rehearsing around the house. So there was always music kind of
at the house.
Well, they used to come into our, I don't know quite why, but they didn't have anywhere to rehearse, I guess, and they used to come into one of our little sitting rooms at the side where there was a piano. So there was always piano stuff going on, and then Squeeze would come, and they weren't called Squeeze at that point, but they used to come round, and Glenn Tilbrook and Chris Difford would kind of come, and you'd sort of hear these songs being written and sort of being played, which was it was amazing, and it was a big inspiration. So that was kind of 7 or 8, and then
did they send you out, Christopher, or were you allowed to stay around?
I used to stand outside the door because it was quite loud, and they used to kind of try and concentrate, I suppose, because what they were doing, I suppose, before they went to the pub, and then they'd go off down the pub, and I had to kind of go in and see what all the instruments could do, and what I could, if I could sort of play anything, which hopefully they didn't mind. But that was kind of good fun. So that's why I got the bug really for that, which is I haven't really looked back since. But yeah, that was the earliest memory of music-wise, from sort of 7 or 8, and then obviously Jools or Julian would be always playing the piano, particularly the boogie woogie stuff, So I kind of you couldn't really escape that. So that was, if you're up at night trying to sleep, you'd hear this sort of rumbling from downstairs, and it was amazing, to go to sleep to. So I kind of say to him sometimes, could you show me sort of left hand or a little lick here and there, which he did. So that was all good, So,
what an amazing environment to be brought up in.
Yeah, so I suppose you've got a bit of a mixture of that kind of piano stuff and then Squeeze, and then you kind of gel it all together with the sort of Stevie Wonder-y stuff as well. So to make your own sort of thing, really. But it takes a while to kind of get to that stage, I suppose, because at the beginning you're just kind of just trying to play something that's vaguely kind of sort of sounds sort of interesting or tuneful, I suppose. And then a bit later on you start trying to write songs, all that stuff.
So, what was the house like that you were in then, Christopher? Where were you? What was it like?
It was quite interesting. It was in sort of southeast London, and it was quite a very normal, fairly nice house. It we had two. I seem to remember we had two, because I've got a twin brother, and we had two sort of twin dogs, which were kind of collie dogs, and they used to fight quite a lot, so we had to get rid of one of them, which was a bit sad. But also, me and Richard, my twin brother, used to, as kids do, just sort of play fight a bit. So it must have been quite difficult, everyone around that house, to have these twin dogs and twin boys, but sort of fighting and stuff. But it was a really happy atmosphere generally, So it was all kind of quite. It was quite a happy house, and there was always music being played and parties happening, as far as I remember.
Was there? Yeah.
And sort of wine being drunk and lots of sunshine. Really, it's probably the best way of remembering.
Brilliant. We're speaking to Christopher Holland here, a musician on BBC Radio Leeds one-on-one. So this is sort of idyllic, if you like, almost. Music, sunshine in your life. You get rocked in your sort of late teens by this motorbike accident. In between, then, you must have sort of really started getting into the music big time, bands, that sort of thing, major influences, and we're going to play some of more music in a moment, but that really got underway by then?
Yeah, I think almost, because Squeeze started taking off in about 77, 78, and at that point I was about 12 or 13, and with my twin brother Richard, he played drums, I played keyboards, and we'd sort of almost started a band at that point, and then we met a couple of girls from school, basically, who played guitar and sang, Lisa Covington, who I'm still friends with. We started playing some local parties and then some pubs if we could get away with it. And then we got spotted to go on TV show, which was... it was like after Magpie. I don't know if you remember that TV.
I do. Yeah.
And it was presented by Mick Robinson. It wasn't actually that programme, but it was a follow-up from that programme. So Mick Robinson was doing it, and another girl called Trudy Dance, who spotted us playing locally anyway, and she said, "Do you want to come on the show?" And so we were only about 14, but that kind of all took off suddenly, so we became like this kind of local band, and that was great. And then a few years later on, when we got signed to Miles Copeland's IRS Records label, had a couple of singles out with him, so that was a great experience as well.
You've got to continue talking about your career and how it's gone, because you've not really looked back since those B-Sharps days, even though I know you said that the band folded. But just at the top, we were talking about how I think you sound like a little bit like George Harrison. I don't know if it's your lyrics or it's the actual sound of the music on your album Corner Green. Why have you chosen this particular song then? I mean, clearly it does have some influence.
Yeah, I think with the recording now, I try to keep it as organic as possible and as real as possible. So, I try to keep all the instruments pretty much acoustic, unless it's, if it's synthesizers and old keyboards, it's always the vintage ones. But it just seems a much more warmer sound to me, and all the records I seem to love are the ones from that kind of period of the sort of 70s, and obviously that's sort of, I suppose, what George Harrison's albums were as well from that time, and lots of acoustic guitars and stuff, so slide guitars. But yeah, I've tried to incorporate that as much as possible, because there's just me and an engineer who's also a brilliant guitarist and overall sort of technical genius called Ron Box, who's helped a lot with all the guitar parts. So he's kind of got that influence as well. So I think that's kind of really helped with that sound, So yeah, is that George Harrison I can hear in the background?
It is, certainly is.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
How does this make you feel when you hear it then?
Well, it is a pretty spiritual song, isn't it? It's pretty uplifting, this one, yeah.
My Sweet Lord, second choice from Christopher Holland, one-on-one BBC Radio Leeds.